Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to my kind of October spooky video. October is, of course, Victober, so I also try to incorporate something that is either fitting for Victober or kind of a good companion. I'm not very clear, I think, but we can just get into the books. But anyway, it's also spooky season. So I thought I talk to you about a couple of books that might fit this prompt if you want to read something spooky, I'm not into horror, really, the hardcore horror, so you won't find anything like that. But I thought something a bit spooky might interest you. We start with a book that had to really grow on me, and that is it's just before the Victorian era starts, and that is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, published in 1817. And if you follow my channel for a while, you will probably remember that I ranked Jane Austen's novels at some point, and this came in last because I just didn't really like it. But a couple of you commented, thankfully, that, maybe give it another try. And it's definitely growing on me. So, yes. And it's a short one. And it's not maybe really very scary or spooky, but it's more, a little bit poking fun at the Gothic genre. So you have a very young, impressionable heroine, Catherine Morland, and she is completely enamored with Gothic romance and Gothic horror stories, and she sees mysteries and suspense at every corner. So when she falls in love, and then she is invited to the house of her beloved to, get to know the family, and that is Northanger Abbey. And there is the typical atmosphere of locked rooms, hidden family secrets, the strange noises, older people, the father who's kind of scary and weird. But the travel, I have to say, the journey to Northanger Abbey happens, Northanger Abbey happens, I would say, after a good half almost of the book. So before that, it's more to establish, the love for the horror story, the love for the Gothic romance. Yeah, and it pokes fun at it in a typical Jane Austen gentle way. So it's not, poking fun like very satirical and sarcastical. That's not Jane Austen's style. But it's a good kind of, not too sinister horror story, or Gothic story. I shouldn't say horror story, Gothic story with a twist. And then, of course, for Victober, I will leave a link to Katie from Books and Things. She's one of the hosts. And if you are not yet familiar with Victober, or if you haven't watched the announcement video, even though it's already the 13th, so halfway through, but you can still participate. You will find the prompts and everything in Katie's videos, and links to all types of other videos. So I leave a link to her channel down below. But one of the books that is a Victober read and kind of fits also the spooky is, of course, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, published in, 1847. So a good 30 years after Jane Austen. I have to say, this is not my favorite Bronte book of the Bronte sisters, because I don't like the romance in it. So you have Jane Eyre, our title character, who is an impoverished orphan who is treated very badly in the school that she grows up in, a boarding school that she grows up in. Her family relations that she are horrible, and then she finds employment as a governess with Mr. Rochester, and then love story ensues after she finds employment there by Mr. Rochester. And it's that romance that I don't like because I think Mr. Rochester is a jerk. That's just my opinion, But anyway, the why I'm featuring this book for spooky is because you have this typical trope of the dark secret, the ghost in the attic, so to speak. If you haven't read that, I'm not going to explain what I mean by ghost in the attic because I don't want to spoil you. But for those of you who read it, you know what I mean. And of course, Jane is, she realizes that something is not quite right, and that gothic atmosphere is you can find throughout that part of the book that Jane Eyre is with as a governess with Rochester. That's all I'm going to say. I really, really don't like the romance part, but the gothic element of it, I definitely thought was extremely well done. And then we have two books that I don't have a physical copy here. They are elsewhere. The first one is, I will insert a picture if I can find one. If I can remember. That's Picnic at Hanging Rocks. Picnic at Hanging Rocks by Joan Lindsay. Published in 1967. So we are 80 years now from Jane Eyre. And here comes the picture. This is set, it's historical fiction because it's set during the Victorian age in 1900 at a rich girls' boarding school. And it's set on Valentine's Day, and there is an outing. They go, to visit the rock, the hanging rock. A group of them, including a teacher, and they're gone. Well, there is a search, and one of the ladies is found, but she can't remember a thing. This all has impact, of course, on the school as well. So it's a combination of very down-to-earth consequences of a fateful event, but also it has this gothic feel to it, the gothic part of the story, because what happened to the group of women or young girls who went to this picnic is not, we don't know, but it's something ghostly. And I think the interesting thing also about this book is that when Joan Lindsay first wrote it and submitted it to her publisher, I forgot who, I haven't written it down, so I forgot who the publisher is. But there was a last chapter, 12 pages, where she explains the mystery. So she explains what had happened to those young women. And her publisher, I think very smartly said, we should just skip that last part, that last chapter, and leave the mystery kind of mysterious. So now this last chapter is published separately. So if you're interested, you can find that. But I think the book lives from, or is so good because of the mysterious quality of it. And the next one, I also don't have, is that right? Yes, the next one, I also don't have a copy, and that is a modern book. We're now going into the modern 2015, Laura Purcell, The Silent Companions, and I will, picture here. I think this is one of the best gothic kind of gentle horror stories that I've read, even though this is pretty grim. but not in terms of, flying body parts or zombie like that's not, but it's psychologically really, really grim. So you have our heroine, who was just married, was pregnant, but her husband died even before she gave birth, and she is whisked off to the rather dilapidated country estate of her late husband, in order to give birth. And part of the story is set in the mid-Victorian age on that country estate, and part is set 200 years earlier in the mid 17th century, so 1660 something, where a family member, former family member, I mean an old late family member of that famous of that family, a young woman called Anne. There's a diary, and the silent companions are kind of dolls. She finds, our heroine finds, a quite lifelike doll that resembles her, and it's very creepy, really creepy. The frame of the story is that we encounter her, not the doll, but our heroine, when she is in how do you say that? And yeah, I don't think you say that now anymore, but it's an insane asylum. I'm just trying to get rid of this. I'm sorry, there is something not right here. I hope you don't see this. Something. Anyway, so the frame story is even afterwards, when Elsie, our heroine, is in this asylum. She doesn't speak. There's something horrible has happened, and then the story unravels. And I'm very stingy with 5 stars. This was a 5-star read for me because I thought it was so well done, so suspenseful, so creepy, and such a good story. So it's a good companion read to, if you are into Victober and you read Victober literature or Victorian literature, because it's set at least partly in the Victorian era, and I can highly, highly recommend it. The next book is published also recently, or I mean, it's a newer book, and that is 2017, so 2 years after now the Silent Companion, and that is Alice Thompson, The Book Collector. This is set in Edwardian times, and you also have the trope of a woman looking for the secrets of her husband, who is a book collector. It's not bone collector. I sometimes say bone collector because of that movie, I guess, but it's a book collector. And in Edwardian England, Violet has a fairy tale existence: loving husband, beautiful baby son, and luxurious home. But then, after the birth of the baby, her life begins to disintegrate. Violet becomes obsessed with the book of fairy tales her husband has locked up, for reasons that will become clear in the book. It's the same. I mean, often these books have the trope of the crazy woman, like in Silent Companions, Elsie, who we first meet in an insane asylum, as it was called back then. She also disintegrates Violet when she investigates, or when she becomes obsessed and tries to find out what this book collection is about. The same, of course, with Jane Eyre. The ghost in the attic, saying no more. So this is quite a familiar trope. This was, I liked it. I didn't love it, but I think if you are into that kind of gothic, spooky setup, this might really work for you. So I would say give it a try. The next one, the last one, set in as historical fiction, either in Edwardian or Victorian England, so a kind of companion read, spooky Victorian. But this one with a twist, because it's Jess Kidd, Things in Jars, published 2019, I think, if I'm not mistaken. 2019. You have, like I said, it's set in Victorian England. Our main character, or two main characters, I should say, two women. One is a private detective, Bridie Devine, and then her 7-foot-tall housemaid, companion, help. And yeah, they are both very, very special people, I would say. What makes this with the twist is, of course, if you've read Jess Kidd, you will know, but the humor. It's gothic. It has a horror element, the gothic element, but it's also really, really funny. Jess Kidd is just hilarious. So you have the typical things. Bridie is asked to investigate the disappearance of the daughter of a rich Victorian man, and Christabel, I think the daughter's name. And there is something with that daughter, something outer-worldly or supernatural or something. And you also have a ghost who is kind of depressed and melancholic and has a lot of tattoos, and he helps Birdie with the investigation. So you have the ghosts and everything, but always with Jess Kidd, always with a twist. It's pretty dark, this one, because you really go into dark territory of Victorian London, but the humor balances it. So I love Jess Kidd, and I definitely loved this one. And the last one I want to feature is kind of in the more sci-fi fantasy category. Dystopian, maybe is the best word. And that is Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon, published 2021. So it's the most recent of all the books. And you have a dystopian setting with a very young girl, Vern, who flees, escapes a compound where she has lived under, a tyrannical father, tyrannical cult kind of thing, and she flees into the wilderness. We don't know exactly when this book is set, but it's a dystopian, futuristic, I would say, setting. And then Vern, who is pregnant, giving birth to twins. That's not a spoiler. That happens pretty early on. But something is off with the kids, but also with Vern's body. She meets other outlaws, quote unquote. And it has this definite gothic element to it, the ghostly element. Especially because of what happens to Vern and how, the story develops without giving you any spoilers. But it's different from certainly historical fiction set in London in 1863 because of that dystopian setting. But sometimes, for some people this works, especially if you like the dystopian. If you're not into dystopian fiction, don't pick this up. It's not going to work for you. Okay, so these were my, 7 kind of spooky, partly Victorian setting, partly Victorian reads, partly dystopian. So it's an eclectic mix. I hope there's something in there for everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As you might have realized, I am caught up with my comments, finally. I'm very sorry that it took me so long to answer your comments. So leave a comment. Please, because I'm always happy if you leave a comment, and I'll see you all soon in the next one next Sunday.